let's talk about my 2024 reads. I really need to get a microphone because I fear that you're too far to hear me. Try not to yell because Kyrie is asleep. But we're going to talk about my books. Okay. Let's just go over the books and then we'll go over my statistics. I'm kind of to the side here so that any books I don't have with me, I will be able to put here. Statistics can be put here and everything. I have them all stacked up here. I guess the first thing I could say is I read 22 books, actually 23, but 22. I did read one Wattpad book because I was like trying to decide if I could read like digitally, which I think I can. So let's go over books. I use Storycraft to keep track of all my books. I like using Storycraft more than Goodreads because I like supporting Black women. Okay, let's start with the first one. Of course it's at the bottom. I will tell you in order of what I read, and then I will say which month I read it in and then how many stars it is. The first book I read in January, and it is Lore Olympus of Volume 5. I gave this book 5 stars. Love this whole graphic novel series. It will always be 5 stars to me. Next book is Amari and the Night Brothers. I gave this 3.5 stars and I read this also in January. I'm telling you the months so you can tell like where I didn't read books because it's kind of weird. Next, I read Alice Oseman's Loveless, and I also read this in January, and I gave this 3.5 stars. The next one is The Hawthorne Legacy. I only have this first book. I do want to eventually buy the other ones, but I really like this book. I read it in February, and I gave it 4.25 stars. And then I read Stalking Jack the Ripper. I did own this one, but I donated it since because I didn't want to keep it. I read this one also in February, and I gave it 4 stars. Good Girl, Bad Blood, the second book in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series from Holly Jackson. I gave this one 4 stars and I read this in March. Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune, I think is how you say it. Read this also in March and gave this 4 stars, but like now that I think about it, I could put it a little higher because I constantly think about this story. I listened to The Teacher by Frida McFadden. I listened to it on Libby. Love Libby. If you're an audiobook person, recommend Libby. I read it in April and I gave it 3.5 stars. I've heard it's her worst book and I haven't read any more, but that one was good. Next, Big Daddy, Fourth Wing. Love this book, love fantasy. I read this in April and I gave it 5 stars. Then I read The Vanishing Half. That is another book I've donated, didn't really want to keep it. Did I donate it? I don't think I donated it. I think my mom has it upstairs. It's same as Jack the Ripper actually. Anyway, I read it in April and I also gave that 3.5 stars. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, don't own that. I listened to it audiobook and I read it in April. Oh, no, May 1st I finished it. And I gave that 3.5 stars. And then the next, Big Daddy, Iron Flame. I heard a lot of bad things about this online. I personally liked it. I could tell it was a little rushed by certain parts of it, but it was seriously so good. And I gave this also 5 stars and I read this in May. And The Final Gambit, which is the final book in the trilogy of like the Inheritance series. Is that what the series is called? I don't know. I read that in May and I gave that 4.5 stars. Okay, I listened to the audiobook of, let me just get my phone up because I don't want to butcher the name, Hidden Valley Road, Inside the Mind of an American Family. This was my first like biography and it was very, very good. I highly recommend it. There's also like a documentary out if you wanted to watch that. I've never watched it, but the book was really good. Gave it 5 stars. I would never give anything below 5 stars for a biography, okay? I don't usually rate them. This one I rated 5 stars. Highly recommend everybody reading it, and I listened to it in July, which is like completely missed June. Like my reading is all over the place. Okay. Next one is Lore Olympus Volume 6, also 5 stars, and I read this in July. Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, I read this also in July and I gave this 3.5 stars. The School of Good versus Evil, also read that in July and I gave it 3 stars. This summer will be different. I'm not a romance person, I'm not, but it's about PEI, how do I not read it? And I also read that in July and I gave it 4.5 stars. From people who actually read romance, some of them didn't like love it. I don't read romance, I just like that it took place in PEI. And it was like funny that her name was Lucy because Lucy Maud, right? Lucy Maud Montgomery. And I just liked everything about this. I could do a deep dive just into this into this book. Next one is Ducks. It is Ducks, 2 Years in the Oil Sands. This is also biography, but it is done in Ugh, it's a heavy boy. Graphic novel. I did not give this a rating since it is a biography. Didn't love it. It's just not the type of graphic novel I usually read. And I read this in August. The Naturals. I seriously need to buy the rest of the series and read them all. They're so good. It's about like, I like how I'm like giving descriptions of some and not all, but this is about a group of teenagers who have like natural abilities and they have to like solve crimes basically, like help the FBI. It was really, really good. I gave it 4.25 stars and I read it in September. Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This was so good. I also need the rest of the series for this. I read it in October and I gave it 5 stars. One more. Bride. Don't currently have it. Georgia is borrowing it. I read this in December and I gave it 4.5 stars. That's all the books I read. Very proud of myself. Should I change up the angle a little bit? Should I like bring you guys closer? Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. So those are all the books I read besides these 3. But now we're gonna go over statistics. Like I said, I use Storycraft, love Storycraft, and I have all my statistics here. I will pull them up and show them to you guys. But before we do that, I wanted to get into how I started rating books this year. I saved it my favorites. I watched this YouTube video of a girl who does book videos. I don't remember her name. She was a Miss Rachel at one point. I will put the clip up here, but this is how she rates it. So she rates books 1 out of 10. I do 1 out of 5, so I give everything a half point. But like plot, is the story engaging and well structured? Does the plot hold your interest throughout the book? So if it's like yes, then it gets a 0.5. If it's no, it gets a 0. It can go to 2.5, whatever. So that's what I use to rate all my books from now on. So it's not just me randomly giving like, that's a 5 star, that's a 3 star, that's a whatever. Start doing that halfway through the year and it really helped me realize what books were my favorite. Anyway, let's get into the statistics of the year because I love that part and that's my favorite part about Storycraft is honestly that. So my goal this year was to read 10 books, random number. I read 22 books, 23 with the Wattpad book, but I didn't include that. Yeah, I'm really proud of myself. This year, my goal is actually to read 24 books, so 1 a month, because every year I'm like, I could read a book a month, but like, why not try for 2 books a month now, right? And I did read 22, so I could definitely do 24. This is how many pages I read this year. 9,464. I want to read like 12,000. I think that'll be my goal, like maybe 15,000. And then average time to finish books, 4 days. That's not accurate for me. I like only add books into Storycraft once I'm done reading them. Like I don't like updates, so ignore that. Next is the moods. So there's my biggest ones, emotional, adventurous, and mysterious. And these are all off of my personal moods while reading these books. So actually I will hit into Storycraft. I know like you guys can't see the graphic, but I will click on it. So like emotional books, 13 of my books were emotional or like made me feel emotional. Adventurous, 11 of my books were adventurous. Like that's what I love about Storycraft. It's actually so nice doing that. Next is pace. So 64 of my books were medium pace and 36 were fast. I didn't read any books that like were slow for me this year. Maybe Ducks actually. I honestly could have put that at slow. It took me a while compared to like other graphic novels, but I didn't, and it is what it is. And then page numbers. So 83% of my books were between 300 and 500 pages, and then 14% were 400 plus, which is kind of crazy. I don't know, I'm just not I just don't ever lean to like the smaller books. I kind of wish I did, because I consider myself a slow reader. I don't think I'm slow, I just like forget I'm reading. Anyway, that's a topic for another day. Fiction versus nonfiction. So like I said, this year I read Ducks and the American Family one. So I read 2 nonfictions this year, which is impressive for me, and that is 9%. 91% it was fiction, so 20 books. And then this is my favorite. It is the genres. So 10 of my books were fantasy. I think that's 8 of my books were YA, 6% were romance, 5% were mystery, so on and so forth. You see all that. It's actually so cool to see that. Fantasy is my favorite. As you can see, there's 3 books here. Well, these 2 are fantasy, this one isn't. But like, these are the books I keep are on this bookshelf. These are books we've already read. My sisters are under here. I keep some of Kyrie's here. These are my sisters. Almost every book I keep is fantasy or like Greek mythology-esque. I don't keep anything else. Well, except for the Hawthorne, the Inheritance series. But I very much lean towards fantasy, which is probably why I'm a slow reader, because you can't jump from one fantasy into another. It's just too much. Now, my average star rating was 4.19 stars, which was okay, I guess. I had 6 5-stars and then 6 3.5 stars, and then everything else was lower. The one non-rating was Ducks, and I really should have done the American Family one no rating as well, but I did really enjoy that, so I gave it 5 stars. And that is all of my statistics. I do have a couple of goals this year that I want to share with you. I am going to post this video after my goals for the year video, so if you want to check that out, you can. I will talk about all my goals in there, but I have 3 specific book goals for this year. The first one is to read 24 books, as I already said, 2 a month. Obviously, I don't need to split it up like that. I will read them when I read them, but that is my goal. I want to read 1 self-help book. I actually have 2 that Ricky bought me for Christmas or my birthday a few years ago, and I've been like slowly reading them and not like going through them quickly. So I want to read at least 1 of them this year. And then another goal, and this isn't, and this like there's no like pinpoint on how many to read. I want to read French again. I haven't read an actual French novel since high school, and I doubt I even like read through it then. I'm sure most of you guys know I work in a daycare that is French first, so I really want to like continue developing my vocabulary in French. So that's it. I forgot I included you guys in this video and I didn't film it, and then my big camera's dead, so you're on my vlog camera. But I put on my Instagram story asking you guys how many books you read this year, and then like what your favorite book was. So I just want to go over that right quick. I had 8 responses on how many books you read. 0. Carissa, come on girl. I'm just joking, I get it. I had a 38, 24, 41. Somebody's like, I think I read like 12. My goal was 20, I read 12 I think. 36.5 lol, so you must have been halfway through a book. You will finish it before that year's end, Keisha. And 27. And then when I asked about favorite book, I didn't get very many answers in this. Somebody said Hockey Romance. The Mindfuck series and the Powerless series. Oh mama, I loved it. I really want to read the Mindfuck series. I'm gonna have to get my hands on it. It is on Kindle Unlimited, which my sister has a Kindle, so I could always like be like, can I borrow that to read that series? Potentially. My friend Sarah Grace, we work together, we're very good friends. We literally bonded over books, I think, if I'm not mistaken again. She put Masters of Death by Olive Blake. I've never heard of that. I'm sure it's really good. She has really good book recs. And then Everything is Sarah J Maas. Am I gonna say my favorite book? I'm gonna like, how do I pick one? I'll talk about a few right quick. I obviously loved Fourth Wing. I love fantasy, and that was like my first like heavier fantasy I read, and I think it just put a love for me for fantasy again, because I don't know, I just like never dove into the world of like fantasy, you know what I mean? And then The Naturals, I love, like Criminal Minds is my favorite show, so that was like really, really good, and I need to buy the rest of the series. And then also Under the Whispering Door. I feel like this is my moment to talk about that book for a minute. I don't think I've ever talked about it on YouTube, but my uncle passed away a few years ago, and I actually bought this book right before he passed away, and it's actually about death. So if you haven't read, hold on, The House in the Cerulean Sea, it is his other book. This is my favorite all-time book. It is family, it is fantasy, it is beautiful. It talks about, it's so beautiful. So then when this book came out, I bought it, and it's when a reaper comes to collect Wallace from his own funeral, Wallace begins to suspect he might be dead. And when Hugo, the owner of a particular tea shop, promises to help him cross over, Wallace decides he's finally dead. So it's about Wallace dealing with his death, and like how death is perceived in this world, and how, you know, not everybody when they pass, sometimes they have unfinished business, and they get to heal that and stuff. So that really helped me heal, because of course there's so many different ways death is perceived, from religion to person to different cultures, and this like gave me a whole different way of viewing death. I'm sorry, I'm getting like a bit emotional, but like I was so scared to read this for so long, because it's about such like a heavy topic for I think anybody. And it's crazy that like a fantasy style book helped heal my heart so much and helped me be like, hey, if this is the reality of death, you know, it doesn't have to be scary. And there's like people there to support you in the afterlife. So I love that. I'm sorry. I'm like, huh. This book just really touched my heart, and I love his writing. And he actually wrote another book. It's In the Life of Puppets, but I have been in a book buying ban for like 2 years now, so I haven't bought it. But yeah, sorry, I didn't expect to cry talking about books, but anybody who reads books gets how emotional they can be. But if you're dealing with something similar, maybe pick up this book, let yourself heal a little bit, and then read it. I don't know. It's just a recommendation. I really loved it. But yeah, thank you again for watching this video. Thank you guys for like staying engaged on my Instagram. I have like diehard Instagram like friends who engage in everything, and I love it. And yeah, here's to another good year of reading.